Hey everybody, this is Lisa Harper, and you're listening to the Not Ready Yet Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey podcast. This is the show that changes the conversations we have with our loved ones about aging and life decisions. Let's have more honest conversations where we speak the quiet parts of life out loud. Today I'm joined by Erin Murphy, founder of ForeverHome and owner of ADM Architecture. For more than 30 years, Erin has helped families create safer, more functional homes that support independence and inclusivity. A nationally recognized architect, aging in place expert, speaker, and author, he specializes in the intersection of housing, caregiving, accessibility, and family decision-making. His upcoming book, The Sandwich I Did Not Order, explores the realities facing adults who are balancing careers, children, aging parents, and everything in between. And I know you're going to bring a refreshing sense of humor to some of these really important and delicate and highly sensitive topics. So, Erin, thank you so much for being here today on the podcast.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I appreciate being invited.
Yes, yes. What is your journey to this moment?
Sure. Yeah, so a combination of going to school at the University of Washington, 92 to 96, getting my architecture degree. At that time, it was watching my grandmother, who during those same 4 or 5 years went from 5'9", traveling the world, playing bridge, playing cards with her friends at a master's level, to 5'2", trapped in a hospital bed and not knowing Carl's name, her husband, grandfather. When I'm 22 years old, I'm not ready to understand or care or want to know about things like grandma's hygiene or how bathing worked. But they lived in a split-level home in Portland, Oregon, and what I saw as an architecture student was the home was broken for her needs. Right? This spec builder house from that era, there was 7 steps to the front door, 8 steps back down to the laundry room by the garage, no shower on the main floor. It trapped her in a way, and very, very difficult. And I know we'll talk more about this probably on the caregivers, right? The paid caregiver, the husband, the spouse who's trying to manage that at the same age. But I also got to watch a completely different episode play out after her passing. My grandfather beat me at tennis at 80, right? He remarried at 89.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until he actually fell and hit his head at 96 mowing the lawn, which he shouldn't have been doing, that he started his own decline, which was quicker and different. But for me, coming out of architecture school, seeing my grandmother look trapped, like her home was a jail of sorts, was very disconcerting. 15 years later, well into my architecture career, I bought a car off Craigslist, and 2 people brought me a car. They were 63 years old. I said, cool, whose is this? It's mom, she's 92, just gave up the keys. She moved into assisted living. And I said, I'm doing a little research. I said, don't answer if you don't want. It's a personal question, but what did that cost you or her to live in that setting? And they said $150,000 out of pocket and 10 grand a month. And that was 20 years ago. It was the nicest one in town. But I immediately I put those 2 light bulbs together and said, I have to have accessibility and aging in place as a part of my architecture firm.
Yeah. And the thing I love is, we've talked about aging in place. Any of the listeners know that's something that hopefully we brought to the table that they didn't know before. But your philosophy on it and your take on it, I think is so unique in how you are positioning this. I know we talked about you mentioned spec builders a few minutes ago, and I don't think people realize how much of what we live in is not meant to be the forever home that we thought it would once be, which I think, you also have that as your company, ForeverHome. And, I think we need people to understand that there is a way to have a forever home. But it's not what's currently out there for the most part. So just to start from the kind of basic level, with that spec home, what do you want the audience to understand about what that equals?
Sure. Yeah. So, a lot of people that are building houses today, whether they build 4 a year or 400, they're, probably using plans that they inherited from dad in 1997, right? Or now that we're in 2026 for this conversation. And you're right? Spec builders build two things. They build the move-in home and they build the move-up home, right? So it's typically your first and second home. Now, what I realized is that from a sales or presentation perspective is unless you worked for Google or Amazon for 20 years, you don't come into my office as an architect unless you're over 40 years old as a general rule. And so I say one sentence every single time in the first meeting. I say, any chance you'll live here in 30 years? Because I said any, I only offered you two choices, 0% or yes, it's possible. I said, great, how are dad's knees doing on the stairs? Can we talk about that? Right, so I haven't done anything about morbidity or mortality or it's just a simple question, right? I've torn my Achilles, I've had shoulder surgery. We have all been through something where our mobility changed, at least for a moment or a period of time. Spec builders aren't thinking about that. And so now we're about to, by 2030, I think is the year, 34, we're about to have more 65-year-olds than 18-year-olds. So not only are we going to have a healthcare problem from a staffing perspective, which is why ER hour, you can wait 8 hours in the ER. Nobody wants to be in the system. So what if your house helps you stay out of the healthcare system or helps you stay out of needing long-term care? That's our vision. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because my financial planner says the only way in, and this was pretty wealthy people that he's talking to, way above my pay grade, zeros wise. He said the only thing breaking people's model is long-term care. When one or both people start spending 10 to 15 grand a month, the money they needed to last to 95, which would have, is now only lasting to 78. It's that expense. It's the fall, it's the surgery, it's the rehab, and then it's the home you can't come home to that triggers that expense. So why aren't we solving that by, back to your question, not building houses the way we built them coming out of World War II with the GI Bill, when we all started chasing the American dream? We should all own our own dirt. We should all be homeowners. Well, the unfortunate result in that is that we now are fragmented as families, multi-generationally by geography. Thousands of years, China, Japan, Kenya, doesn't matter where else you go, multi-generational living, Native Americans, it was normal. We lived as community, as family, until we all said, oh, I'm going to move to Kansas because I can afford dirt and a home there. Well, my parents still live in Portland, Oregon. Now what?
Like we're reconceptualizing how we think of home.
Have to.
We have to. And, more of how does your home perform for you? We look at the shiny things and the upgrades and the cosmetics and how Pinterest worthy it is. And so I think there is a serious conversation to be had about, and you mentioned it earlier, how long do you stay in your home and how long are you able to? And does the home really, in some way predict that? How long? Question. And so that independence and autonomy that everyone wants in housing, it's only achieved if there's some really intentional thinking and planning, and that's where you come in. So how do you want people to think about homes?
Sure. Yeah, and it actually starts at the curb. We can first, and this actually helps also take it out of the personal issue where it gets defensive and it gets avoidant and it gets denialed, right? That's not a word, but if we start at the curb, then I can go to my mom. Don't you want Janet to be able to come over for cards or Christmas? Well, you have steps to your front door because your house is a vented crawl space. Can't we fix that? Because it works, universal design works better for your 6-year-old and your 86-year-old. So we're not having a hospitalizing of the home conversation if we just start with simple things like visitability, right? Hey, your buddy who comes over to look under the hood of your cool 60s car, can he use the bathroom on your main floor if he's got a walker? Not in the spec house.
Yeah.
Just that
Yeah.
that level of, it will work for me, but I want it to work for everybody.
You said earlier, it's not a knee surgery. Most people if they're active and they're doing the things, there's still something that could come up. We're not talking about the end of life. We're talking about the home living with you throughout your life.
Yeah, I mean, my father hasn't had an accident, but he and the guy 2 doors down both played college football. My dad was a quarterback for Purdue, and 70 to 72. Well, guess what? His knees and his shoulders, and they're hurting.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, the active, that's what I
literally
mean.
going down the stairs backwards.
Yeah. And so it is. It's like I feel like I don't want people to tune out because they're like, well, my parents are never going to hear this because they think when I start talking about these things, I'm telling them they're dying.
Okay, let's
And
pause right there, though.
yeah, and I want to.
Yeah, because I also, Lisa, I could give you a script and you could go to my mom and dad's house. I mean, you know what I do, author, publish, right? I've spoken on stages from Chicago to Tokyo. I am still the child. At any age, I couldn't know more than them about any subject. That's not fixable, but I could give you a script. You could sit at their dining room table and you would be freaking Einstein because it's not me. My
Yeah.
point, though, is then hire somebody, invest in getting out of the way as the adult child, because I can get you to the end game because they don't know me. There's an old rule from the 70s and 80s where, as a salesman, the further you travel with a briefcase and a suit on, the smarter you get because they
Yeah.
don't know you. It's the stranger is the expert concept, right?
It
And
is
I
so
would
interesting.
speak to your audience and go, get out of the way. I have sat at a table in Seattle with 77, 78-year-old and 3 adult children in their 50s. And I made the parents laugh at the kids in the context of, it's yours. They're going to get a house worth 800 grand free and clear as a part of the estate. Why are you worried about what they have to do to it after? Even if they did want to put it back, so to speak. But I can promise you the next 5 to 7 buyer cycle for any real estate agent out there, the things you don't know you need until you see them, once you see them, you're going to go, oh my gosh, why haven't we been doing that all along?
Okay.
I was very fortunate. Tom Menti and Barry Long in Washington State actually created the accessibility button for the MLS. It is now a searchable criteria, and they're working on doing that nationally. And I was a part of their continuing education training program for real estate agents. So
Well, that's amazing.
don't
Yeah.
worry about the resale. Don't worry. Invest in not ending up in the hospital and assisted living. That's what you want. If I talk to you about it as empowering housing, we're having a different conversation.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that the accessibility button so that it can be filtered. The listing agents can input that and it can be found by just one simple filter. Recently in April, the National Aging in Place Council, which we're both members of, They had their conference in Atlanta, and there's a group there that is creating a way to assess and score an accessibility rating for your home. And in the future, I hope that we are saying it's not just like the walkability factor, like how close are you to things. There's an accessibility score too for a home, and that becomes marketable and of interest. But we have to have the people knowing about it, wanting it, requesting it, demanding it, and then it'll come. And so I'm excited to hear that about the accessibility button, filter rather. I'm excited to think that that would be part of, hey, somebody's going to be asking about, I really want to know the accessibility score of this home before we even go look at it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think so too. That excites me.
Yeah, and there's definitely some points of inflection. I mean, I got certified, the CAP certification in 2009, right? And I used it in my architecture office for all my clients. And, you know, we scaled the company from 5 to 7 figures, and a third of our work has to do with accessibility in the home. But that's because I'm used to talking about it, and I talk about it with every individual client that's doing a residential project. Right, I've done 2 million square feet of commercial, which is why I just inherently understand the ADA and the ANSI code and the HUD, because you have to be able to use a wheelchair at your bank to go to the bathroom. That's just fair, right? That's fair to all concerned, so to speak. But housing's never had that, and that's the issue we're facing now. Is there's no ADA or a quality code in residential code books.
Yeah.
There is in multifamily, because a percentage of the units have to allow for other amenities for people of different abilities, but single family doesn't have it.
Right. Single family doesn't have it. But I think it's important to say that I would think everybody wants a high quality of life. And yes, things happen. I always say that we have sudden events in life that change the trajectory. It is a thing. Nothing is guaranteed. Aging is a gift. Everybody wants this high quality of life, but it's kind of like taking these steps to say, I'm planning for it. But we talk about the size of doorways, just to have an understanding that that could be a walker, that could be a wheelchair, that could be planning for the design of your caregiver. When you add another human to be there to help you, support you in your mobility and transitions, there's a caregiver involved in that space too. We need them to stay healthy. So I think like designing with a caregiver in mind too is an interesting concept.
You know, caregiver burnout is real. If you know Neil Shaw on LinkedIn, who has Care Yaya, which is about partnering people, medical students as caregivers for elderly. They say that you age, I think you lose a year of life for every 3 years of caregiving, or you age 3 to 7 times faster. Whatever that timeline is, you're burning off the end of your candle. And part of it is that. It's me trying to lift 90 pounds when I'm leaned way over. It's not correct body posture. So you're absolutely right. And that's where I try to get, if I can, an occupational therapist involved, right? I say for that relationship, I know the building, you know the body. Okay? So I know where we could save money by moving the shower head, but which side to put it on is a function of, does everyone in your family have a stroke on the left side? Did everyone on your family go blind in the right eye? I ask those questions, right? Just looking for familial history, medically speaking, because that's about as far as I can go as an architect, is to say what has been the story of your familial past, and how can we plan just in case that happens. But if you're in rehab and discharge, then the OT is a great add to the client base for the sake of consultancy, because then the angle of the grab bar matters. I have book information, but I don't have body information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the angle and then the height of things and the placement. I mean, this is as individualized as you can really get because we're talking about the length of your arm and the range of motion you now have. And none of that is turned to page 73 of this book, you know? Since we're talking to the adult kids here, what would be that best guidance if they're like, we don't have a main bath on the first floor, they're concerned about things?
Yep. So yeah, we try, and I spoke at NAIPC last year and ASA. The one of the two, the NAIPC presentation was actually kind of at price point comparison of what can you do, right? And so many times you can say, "Hey, mom, my gift to you for Christmas is changing all the. I'm going to hire a handyman." And I'm going to change all the doorknobs to levers. Or I'm going to change all the, finger pinch light switches like the one behind me into paddles where, right? I explain it a great way to start. Go grab a tennis ball and then put your hand in a sock with the tennis ball and go use your house. Rheumatoid arthritis, your fingers start to curl, your grip strength goes down. Can you use your microwave? Can you get in the door from the garage that self-closes and is thicker and closes on its own? Not if it's a knob. Yeah. So start looking at how much of my house can I use with the back of my hand or my forearm right? And then to your point earlier that maybe about you, the adult child, like, yes, I know I could rent a ramp tomorrow, or yes, I know a handyman can install a grab bar from Lowe's or Home Depot. Well, I know hundreds of products and many of the owners of the companies right? You might know that you can close your garage door from the airport because you have an app on your phone if you forgot. You might not know that you can turn mom's stove off also by swapping knobs, right? Ohm kitchen. Or maybe you didn't understand that the 2-drawer dishwashers they have, originally, they designed them to save water consumption, which is great on a fixed income. What you didn't realize is they found out later they'd actually made an ADA dishwasher because you can roll under it. Okay, and there's stoves where the door swings sideways instead of down. There's microwaves where it swings down instead of sideways. Those are all things that have to do with how you can work with a less mobile body and still utilize your appliances and your utilities and all of that. I've been fortunate. I actually got to put on what's called an age suit twice. Once,
I've heard of those.
Yeah, once I was in, it was the 2014 Home Health Expo in Osaka, Japan. And at Toto's R&D department, where they have sinks that move up and down on the wall for height, and they're clear underneath for a wheelchair or whatever. But they put me in a suit where it's weight on your shoulders, and they strap you down, and you put yellow eyeglasses on, and they muffle the sound, and they take away the tactile feeling at your fingertips. They're making you 85 or so, as far as some of the things that change in your body, and they say, go use our products. And I got to do it again in Seattle, similar. I was sore. Can you get a ream of paper off of a bottom shelf under the kitchen cabinet if the shelf doesn't roll out or your mixer doesn't pop up to the counter height? RevaShelf, for example. I know hundreds of products. You know two. Let's put I really think of myself as a quarterback and a concierge. Right? Let me drive the bus because I actually know all the players. And let's put it together in a way that works for you. Auto slide. Right? They actually have a pet collar that you can actually get your dog door to open when the dog shows up at the door. Okay, so if you're in rehab for a knee surgery, I bet your dog still needs to go to the bathroom.
And you still want them around.
Right. Yeah, so just tons of options.
That's amazing. When we hear architect, it's like you think of the foundation, how it's built, what it looks like. And then you're taking it another step deeper and having the knowledge of all of this age tech and appliances. And like you said, it's not medical. We're not talking about a medical change to your home. We're talking about preventing medical. I love that you're merging all of that. You've worked with families for over 30 years, so you've sat at some kitchen tables and had multiple people, the single solo ager, and then the family of I don't know how many, what your record is of everybody sitting together. Why I started the podcast the way I do with these quiet voices the adult kids have. There's concerns, but they're afraid by voicing concerns they might push loved one away or put up a wall or stop a conversation from even starting because of the approach. Are there any things that you can share from those kitchen table moments that you can help maybe listeners recognize issues before an emergency occurs? Because we can, like, my goal too is that becomes proactive conversations instead of reactive from a crisis. Anything you want to share on that? Because I just know you have a wealth of information.
Yeah, good and bad. I think that probably the furthest you can get in a conversation is about peace of mind. Our parents grew up in an era, and their parents too, where you don't burden others, you suffer in silence. And the last thing they want to do is derail your busy mid-career, teenager, graduation, sports and music life, right? But they keep things quiet. And so do make sure that those couple of times a year that you visit, that you are doing kind of an eyeball inventory of change. And then I think if the need arises where you need to voice a concern, which they'll say, I'm fine, we're fine, everything's fine, and stop talking about it, right? But if you just angle it as, can I give you a gift that provides me peace of mind? I think that's as deep as you're going to get. And if there is reception to that, then I think it is, whether it's us or anybody else, you, me, or the person closest to them geographically, can I introduce you to somebody who knows more than I do about this?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
you have the expert in the room, whether it's CAPS, contractor, whether it's an interior designer, whether it's a case manager on discharge, or, right, somebody else. Can I just introduce you to somebody?
Yeah. And I think when you come from a place of you're saying would give me peace of mind, the number one thing is that nobody here is trying to make decisions for anyone. It's not a control thing. It's not I think with the sandwich generation, we're sometimes like, I see the quickest way from A to B. Let's just go there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Let's just go there.
Oh.
And that is not what this is.
No, I think it took 7 years for my wife and I, mostly her, because I'm not related, to get her father, but I was in her ear, to, set up estate planning related, like LLCs for properties. And, he can't barely get in the truck anymore at 84, but, he's trying to fix sprinkler systems because that's how he did it when he was 50. Well, you can't get in the hole or get out of the hole, and if you try to do it alone, that might be your last day working on a sprinkler. That is making me lose sleep. How can I help? You can sit in the truck and give instructions to the 22-year-old. It won't be me, right? You have to find a way around. But yes, I promise you that this is a multi-layered, potentially year conversation. There's something important about allowing somebody to make it their own idea, even though it was yours. And if you can think that through, and if you can play conversational mental chess instead of checkers, and you can kind of reverse engineer, what is my end game, where everybody leaves feeling empowered and dignified and has the autonomy? Because you're right. In my life as a business owner, I'm like, oh my God, I could have this fixed in 6 minutes, write a check, and never think about it again. But dad wants to drive 90 minutes to save 10 cents on a washer and tells you for a year and a half that he could plumb the washer and dryer himself. And why would you spend that money? Okay, so you can't plumb it yourself anymore. You're not crawling around under the deck at 80. And I don't know how to do it. And we together have the money to pay someone who does.
Yeah.
But they don't want to give up that. That's, for some of them, that is their purpose.
Right.
Right? And we cannot take purpose away. Right?
Correct.
My mom hasn't fixed the railing on their deck for 18 months. I've offered 4 times to get involved. I'm like, hey, just have the contractor video call me. We'll talk it through. She says that's her purpose. I say, no, it's an undone to-do list that's stressing us both out. And it's a risk factor, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
You can't wear the glasses for them where you can see the life that they see with the tent they receive the information. And sometimes you'll never get there. But I think that's what we should try to do.
Yeah, and I agree. And the thing I say here is these conversations are a process. There's no yes, no. Even if you offer, like you say, you've offered how many times, it's got to be when they're ready. And we don't, unless there's an urgent crisis, but then your options are sorely diminished. This is the proactive conversation. This is the what happens if, those scenarios. I know everybody doesn't have the best relationship really just to get that voice out. But trust me, to have these conversations while you still can. And again, if they push back, time is the best medicine, and hopefully they're thinking about it. You've given them something to think about.
And let's even go so far as to say they never accept it, they never change. I'm coming into that mortality space in my 50s of, can I go to, if they fall, if they end up in the hospital, if they die, do I believe that I tried my best?
Yeah.
As far as living with it, right? And that's the effort that's worth it, right? You cannot pick someone else's bottom, right?
No.
Whether you think about your parents or someone in addiction, or they have to reach their own conclusion in their own time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't offer your version of that.
No. And I love that, because that's what I want, is that people, at least if they try, they know they tried. And they tried to have a moment. It's when you don't do anything and you should have, and then something happens. So that's why I say just get these voices out, because your peace of mind after, and again, I don't want, the grim road does exist, things do happen. But to have that moment of, I tried to have these conversations, I did what I could. You have that peace moving forward. That's what I want to give adult kids, because you don't have those conversations and they're gone. That is a lifelong of that same feeling. That feeling, it's like grief itself. It doesn't go away. It might get less loud, but that is a feeling that in the grief process, if you can avoid it, you're going to be grieving anyways. Be at peace with at least some of this. And that's why I'm encouraging these conversations so much. That's my passion right there. I just don't want, once people are gone, you don't have options. You do not have options. So I thank you for taking that next step to that, because that really is important. And so, I know, well, we're talking about the sandwich generation. Tell us about your book. Tell us about what we're expecting here, and when we can expect it.
Yeah. So we'll try to have that out by the end of the year. You mentioned it earlier. The sandwich I did not order, and the picture's cartoonish, but it's, the 2 adult children squished between a kid going, hey, can I buy concert tickets, and can you Venmo me, and right, and mom and dad go, yeah, we know, right? I'm at that chapter. I remarried, so we each had 2. I have 4 kids between 17 and 21. So, multiple college visits and tours and SATs and, drivers, whatever, and or even if you had kids a little younger, then maybe you're also still the Uber driver. On LinkedIn, I have a newsletter called Monday Musings of a Gen X, and that was my last one, was, that light at the end of the tunnel when you get to give up your Uber card as a parent, because we spent 10 years waiting at each other driving the other way because you're taking him to band and I'm coaching baseball. And yeah, we all,
Yeah.
it's the thick of it. But
Yeah.
the book itself is me taking time to process all of the chapter changes. So my youngest daughter has just decided she wanted to go to nationals. She made it out of regionals to go row crew in Florida. She's accepted a scholarship to go row D1 at Gonzaga in Spokane. So
Amazing.
that journey. But I'm going through my youngest, my biological youngest is about to go, right? And all of that. And it could be anything. It's, divorce and how you deal with the co-parenting chapter, and that's coming to an end. Weirdly, today's my last child support payment forever, right? Like, and everything just has a chapter, but that 45 to 60, it's like every chapter is being flipped. You start parenting your parents. You start learning about estate planning. You start thinking about verifying retirement ability. I don't know. To me, it's just like there's so many roles that get flipped on their head. Whether you learn, my wife's a middle school principal, and so, understands child development stuff. And she goes, you really spend 0 to 12 as the sage on the stage. And then you end up from 12 to 18 as the guide on the side. And then you hope you did it right. You're there if the crash looks pretty bad and there's blood. You let it go, see how it goes, and you're available as a safety net, right?
Yeah.
But so yeah, the book is about all of our chapter changes that kind of happen in this last third of our career.
Yeah.
You're also at your highest earning potential, right? It's like, gosh, as an architect, I walk away from $200 an hour when I have to go help my dad because he takes a picture of the back of the ambulance leaving his driveway and texts me, and he's home with dementia, and I got to go figure out laundry and food and labeling Tupperware. That's the chapter.
Oh yeah, that's the chapter. When you hear parents say, well, we didn't talk about this with my parents, that's because it didn't exist like this. Nothing existed like this moment.
And to your point earlier, for me, it's housing, right? Where's my highest and best value to move the needle in society? It's start offering homes that are different than the way we did it when you didn't talk to your parents, because as long as you looked good in the pew on Sunday, like June and Ward Cleaver, then everything else went undiscussed, whether it was alcoholism or abuse or nope, don't talk, right? It's a different era. But the real issue is lifespan and how to get a health span that matches lifespan. I know Scott Fulton, who wrote Wealth Span with the capital H, right? Those are the things we have to talk about now. I think it was 1889 when the United States came up with retirement and Social Security, right? And your lifespan was 47 and you worked until you died. That's a pretty good insurance policy when the math said, we'll start paying you 3 years after you're supposed to die.
Yeah.
Okay, but now we live to 78 and many people are living to 95 and 100, right? And financial planning has to change, housing has to change, support and healthcare systems have to change. And I do believe that we're starting to see, I think it happens in age tech first, with the ability, home monitoring, home health, right? And that some softwares can be really useful, especially to the point of the geographic separation. But I think we're really starting to look at home, the hospital coming back home. We were almost back to the doctor in the briefcase ringing the doorbell.
Yeah, and they are some places here in Charlotte. We have the concierge level, and there's companies coming in that's what they do. They come to you for most things, right? A lot more things are portable and accessible mobily now, is my point. So I just feel like the whole conversation, it may seem awkward to them because of that. We live in a different time, and to understand those options, understand what independence at home looks like. Think about that as your like part of that retirement plan. I hear your passion. I just love your approach, talking to builders, helping everybody understand there are other options.
Yeah, well, I think as far as us, the audience that is first dealing with the people, our parents who may not have done anything and now we're walking in crisis, nobody makes good decisions when they're backpedaling financially and emotionally at the same time. So start the conversation. If you need help with the conversation, ask us, ask a professional to be a part of it, see how to get us in the door and get out of the way. And then I think from the real estate perspective, from the housing perspective, if you are 45, 55, 60, 65, start looking for and asking for, right? The volume of the voice will change the narrative of the product being offered, to your point, right? Create the supply and demand, create the demand side that will make the supply change. Because like I said, if daddy's spreadsheet for the contractor has a black line at the bottom, not a red line, like la la la, I don't want to learn anything new, what I'm doing is working, well, it's about to not. Now I am working in the early adopter phase, right? We built one of our longevity plan spec house plans. We got 2 full price offers in 9 days. 97% was the typical, and 73 days on market was the average for the comps. So when I can explain to a builder that it sold for $15 a square foot more and it sold 88% quicker, oh, now they're listening because all they care about is money.
Right.
Okay, well, let me prove to you why this makes money. We had 2 people ask us to build it again on a different lot in a week, where it got 1,000 views on Zillow and obviously multiple walkthroughs. We had an agent. And now in my town, I had a builder come in from Vegas who lives here now, and we're in Paulsbo, Washington, outside of Seattle. I had a builder come in and he's done 13,000 doors in Vegas in his career. He knows what he's doing. Nice to meet you. He dropped 4 sets of drawings on the table behind me. He said, these are Southwest, make them Northwest. Nice to meet you. Handed him my first book about aging in place, which is really, it's not a room by room. It's just starting a conversation about why society needs to change. He came back a week later and he said, I read your book, throw my plans away. We're doing it your way. Proof of concept number 2. So those houses, and spec builders do what they do. They flip them and one's a gable and one's a hip roof, right? So we designed 3 houses for 24 lots, and then we'll change siding and colors and all that normal stuff. But we have a 1,500 square foot Rambler with 4 foot wide hallways and 3 foot doors and roll-in showers. And then the move up, the 2,000 and the 2,500 square foot house, we actually designed it twice inside the same 4 walls. It's a 4-bedroom now when the kids are growing up, but about the time you might want an elevator, we put the elevator where your second car is going to go away. We've already framed the hole in the floor. We moved walls that aren't carrying the roof. They're not load bearing. Now it's a 3-bedroom and a reading nook with an elevator. You never have to move. You don't have to leave that 3% mortgage because you don't want to move from 2,800 to 1,400 square feet if your mortgage is the same because you went from 3% to 7%. Many people are stuck in place right now, right? This house solves that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the next level. So we're trying to get out at a national level and find those first 1,000 builders that go, oh, yeah, I see what he's talking about. Yeah, we should switch house plans. We should be using ForeverHome's longevity plans with future flex specifications.
Amazing. It's not like a 55 plus community, the way you were saying, families and 4-bedroom and kids and
Right. Yeah.
okay,
I mean,
no restrictions on the
whether
neighborhood.
downstairs extra bedroom is in the 1,500 model is, it doesn't matter. It could be a boomerang kid who had to come back while he's at community college, or it could be the caretaker, and we even designed that. So you change the door from the hall bath to be a door that comes in off that bedroom for privacy. It's the ability to think about more than one chapter, design it in the beginning, get it right before you build it, and all the flexibility is there when you need it.
It's really the forever home. When is that? Like, what's the timeline on that?
Yeah, so he had to do some extra stuff underground, but we've got substrate for asphalt, curb, and gutters, so we're going to start turning in those permits for the building construction, so we should see some verticality later this summer.
That's amazing. And I hope listeners are going, why isn't that near me? Why isn't that an option? You know, if I'm going to, move in my 40s and I'm saying it's my forever home, I'm being duped. It's not your forever home. But these things are available. You can have them. You have to ask for them and know about them, because it's not the norm. It's not what people are putting out there. It's not what has the highest on the profit side.
Profit number at the bottom, and
yeah. So that's really exciting. Well, congrats on that project. Well, Aaron, I like to end the show by doing a ready or not lightning round. Are you willing to play? It's only 3 questions. Okay. And so the first question is, on a home, do you prefer a front porch or a back deck?
I would push front porch because, it's, again, back to the spec house. It's not what we're doing. But I think it's back to what we should be doing because of the isolation epidemic, right? And that I said purpose earlier. My 96-year-old grandmother, every politician that went through a nursing home, she was in charge of getting them set. She had a purpose, right? So and so's coming in 2 months. I'm in charge of the party. Well, my point then is the other side of purpose is community. And I think that the way we used to do it is better. And that means we face the street. We have conversations with people walking by. We know the grandkid next door. That's community. And isolation is it is a pandemic or an epidemic of its own.
100%. It really is. I love that. Well, that's a great answer. I love it. And the thought behind it. The second question is insider language. What's a piece of industry jargon or a phrase that people outside of your field wouldn't understand? And what does it really mean?
Okay, let's talk about accessibility. Let's go with the words crawl space versus slab on grade. Okay, we talked about, the spec house we built. You could get out of a car in a wheelchair and wheel right through the front door. Most areas in the United States, you have vents around the rim board, which is within your framing, and it's so that the crawl space breathes with fresh air so that it doesn't get moldy, too hot, too cold, or too wet. So maybe that's a fun one. Slab on grade would be to say that we poured all of it in concrete, right? You have to be way more careful about really making sure when you do your plumbing rough in, it's through the slab. A lot harder to remodel, but there's a fun one. Crawl space, vented crawl space versus slab on grade.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And then the last one is one thing at age 55. So if every listener did just one thing at the age of 55 to make life easier when they're 75, what would that be?
Oh, I went 2 places in my head. One is start the conversation with your parents. Doing anything that makes that work out better than a crisis. Yeah. And then I would say start thinking about your forever home. And know what it means. And then know what it means to you. Learn how to define it. Learn how to ask for it so that you can then learn how to search for it. It's not the same for everybody. There's a book out there, I don't want to quote the wrong guy's name, Right Place, Right Time. It's worth, I listened to the audiobook. It's worth thinking about. Do you want to be in Spain half the year and where your daughter is half the year, regardless of where she ends up after college, because she's the one that can get you a grandkid someday, right? Everyone's answer is, of course, different and unique. But start that conversation with yourself. Write things down. Start making a pros and cons list. There will always be a sacrifice involved in an opportunity. Which ones are go and no-go for you?
Yeah. And I always say, think for your future self, you know? We get really caught up in the moment and the now and a lot in the past and worrying or think, you know, and it's like, let's kind of shift that, start thinking about the future you. That's why that question exists, because I'm big on the future you. So at 55, if you can do anything at 75, help yourself in the future.
Yeah, I refer to it as planning is winning.
Uh-huh. Planning is
You've
winning.
heard the
Yep.
term, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
I just really appreciate your time today. When we had passed in a Zoom room, and you had said you wanted to talk to builders and to families to really understand housing, I was like, okay, here we go. So I appreciate you taking me up on my invite, and tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you. What do you have going out there in like website world, YouTube world? Let us know.
Yeah, we do. So ForeverHome is the search. As long as you don't find find a pet a home. That's the only competing languaging as far as
Gotcha.
the industry goes. ForeverHome-us.com is the website. You can email me, Aaron, Aaron, at foreverhome-us.com. We do have LinkedIn and Facebook page and Instagram. And so, yep, we're accessible. Yes, a YouTube channel where we did a walkthrough actually of the house we built. Did a lot of, I actually brought the videographer for that one. So,
Great.
yeah, you get a real sense of the things that I can explain that you don't know because you don't know to look for them. But when I point at them and talk about them in a video, you go, oh my gosh, yeah, duh, of course.
Oh yeah, and I encourage everybody to go check that out because it's conceptually hearing, if you're on the road, driving, traveling, commuting, conceptually it's hard. So yeah, get over to see those videos and see what some of these things really look like in real life. Well, Aaron, again, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. Thank you for everything you're doing to change how we see home and how we, well, really see our forever home. And for helping families for 30 plus years, getting them into the right space. So thanks so much again for your time.
Thanks again. It was a really fun conversation.
Thanks for joining me on Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey. If something in this episode gave you clarity or the courage to start an important conversation, or offered a new way to look at things, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need the same encouragement. Remember, navigating aging isn't something we have to do alone or in crisis. With love, logic, and the right tools, we can face what's next with confidence and connection. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps others find the show. And just a quick note, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical, psychiatric, legal, or other professional advice. Always consult a qualified professional for guidance tailored to your unique situation. This is Lisa Harper, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.